Hey everyone, this is Bulbatrainer. Last week, I released a video about the 10 Pokemon I'd pick to transition from a hunter-gatherer society to an agricultural one. I want to thank everyone who watched it and gave positive feedback. It was very much appreciated. While I was writing the script for that video, I made a rather sudden realization. There's a stunning lack of farmers in the Pokemon world. We come across the occasional farm or ranch and what have you, but there's a lack of their presence overall. I noticed it when looking over Milo's Pokemon and realized that he's the first real farmer of note in the series. And you may be asking yourself, oh my god, why does he have such a fixation on agriculture this month? I thought he liked history, religion, and politics. And my answer would be that sometimes I get invested in particular aspects of a franchise, but also that agriculture is related to all three, maybe more so than any other singular topic. Regardless of my motivations for noticing, Milo certainly stood out to me. I might want to tackle labor in the Pokemon world in another video, because there's a lot that we could get into. But today, I wanted to instead focus on that standing out bit. What does Milo's place on the gym leader roster maybe tell us about Galar? What makes a gym leader so special in the first place? I'm endeavoring to answer those questions today. People have made videos on what type of gym or how their teams would look if they were gym leaders, and I might get there one day, because I've certainly thought about it, but let's see why someone would want to be a gym leader in the first place. To start off, I want to see why it would matter at all. How important are gym leaders really? Aren't they just the mini-bosses on the way to the main boss of the Elite Four and Champion? Well, maybe and maybe not. I might bring this up occasionally in other videos, but the red, blue, and yellow games are kind of creepy. I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. But that creepy feeling I get when playing them is due to the realities of game design at the time. They couldn't program a ton of NPCs, they couldn't program a great big bustling city. I still enjoy it, maybe even more so for that feeling, but the games make it easy to believe the creepypastas and legends, seeing the monochrome graphics and experiencing the emptiness of this first Kanto. The way I view it, red, blue, and yellow feel like echoes of what the franchise would eventually become. Not fully realized, still kind of empty. This Lavender Town could absolutely be haunted. Part of that empty, creepy feeling instilled in me the idea that gym leaders were, well, kind of bullies. Cities were lawless, wild places where Pokemon could be lurking. Back then, the monster side of Pokemon was more hyped than it is now. And the only semblance of order were the gyms. The impression from the first games especially isn't that the gyms are celebrated, just that they kind of exist. It's a way for teenagers to pass the time, battling the younger kids that come by, making them cry, and whoever is the strongest of that group is the leader. Episodes of the anime like Electric Shock Showdown did nothing to disabuse me of that notion. Surge was kind of a prick in that episode. Even still, the gym leaders were obviously icons for their towns and remain so to this day, even if their characters have, thankfully, become more fleshed out. Blackthorn City, Mauville City, Pewter City. For most people, the first thing that they'll think of for those names will be the gym leaders attached to the gyms found there. Yes, many gym cities also feature other buildings, events, or characters, but the hub of any settlement where a gym is found is that gym. Usually. There are exceptions, like, I always forget that Azalea Town has a gym because it has the Slowpoke story and the rival battle, but for the most part, I associate a town as being sort of built around the gym and catering to it. This is present in the large majority of gym cities, where the typing of the gym will influence the theme of the city, for want of a better word. I bet I could write a lot of gym cities and their corresponding themes down, but I'll just quickly list a few so you get the idea. Alessa uses electric Pokemon, and Nimbasa City has the most unique lighting design and a giant electricity-consuming theme park. Castelia City is modeled after Manhattan in New York, and the gym leader uses bug-type Pokemon, which I've always thought was a reference to big cities having roaches. Moss Deep City has Tate and Liza, who focus their minds to train the Psychic-type Pokemon, but other minds have focused on space. I'll admit this one might be reaching a bit since they say it's the calm weather that causes the ideals for space travel, but if we're going to play that card, I counter with Psychics are also known for their calm minds. Goldenrod City is the normal gym, and the city is mostly normal. From our perspective, that is. There's stores and semi-gambling, radio and hairdresser, and all of those things are present enough in our real world that they just seem normal. Also Eevee. Even Vermilion City in the first generation may not seem to be all that electric, but if you connect the electric type and technology, as the series often does, then the Pokemon fan club's presence there would seem to be connected to the gym. At the time the game came out, the internet as the way fandoms connected was still new and fresh and exciting. It's a shame how it turned out. Not all gym cities follow this formula, and some of them only do so incidentally, like Azalea Town and its bug-filled forest. A lot of the gyms with type connections to their natural environment couldn't have been the ones influencing, rather they were influenced. They didn't cart a volcano to Lava Ridge Town so the gym type would match, but the gym type does follow the natural course you'd expect of it. It would have been odd to have a water-type gym in Lava Ridge. Ditto for nearly all the water-type gyms, which, unless you're counting Crest, all live in cities with some natural body of water. These connections tell us that gyms aren't random buildings in the Pokemon world, they're important to the cities that host them. Eckerty calls itself the historical city. There's legends and myths and more traditional inspired buildings, and you can really feel the spirit of the past there. Remember those who have come before, and Morty defends this image by using ghost-type Pokemon. Motostoke looks like it was taken out of an article on the Industrial Revolution, a period in our own history when humans were perfecting the use of fire to better our lives, if not our air. Steam engines need heat, metal construction needs heat, and what do you know? We have Kabu here with his fire-type team to keep the fires of industry stoked. Cerulean City prides itself on its abundance of water. At least in theory. And who better to guard that reputation than the water-type trainer with the watery name? This sort of theming can really only happen in fantasy, as I've lived in some pretty small towns and there's usually not a single idea that represents them, and as a city grows, it becomes even less plausible that it can be distilled into a single idea. But there is something similar in our world in sports teams. In the real world, there are cities of various sizes that do center themselves on their high school or college sport of choice. Very frequently, in the US at least, this is gridiron football, but lacrosse, hockey, baseball, and the football that the rest of the world uses are also acceptable. If the city is big enough, they can even be represented by a professional sports team. I don't know much about Minnesota, but I do know that it's the home of the Vikings. Yes, it's a state, not a city, hush. I've never been to the UK, but I do know Wimbledon because of the tennis matches that happen there. This seems to be how it works in the Pokemon world too. The world is much smaller and Pokemon exist, making transport much easier, but that level of respect from the community and renown with the region is similar to how gyms are treated in the Pokemon world, and that in turn influences how gym leaders are seen. Anime aside, the gym leaders are really just slightly more NPCs than the first generation. Like, in the anime, Sabrina has a mini-arc about being evil and creepy dolls and the healing power of laughter, but in the games, she's just someone with a whip and some psychic Pokemon. She doesn't really factor into the plot, and the fact that her gym had those teleport pads was more notable than her. She even admits that she doesn't like to battle. Like, then what are you doing here? That kind of changed in Generation 2 when you had Jasmine, for instance, with her sick Amphi, who requires you to go on a side mission before she can be battled. The side mission isn't what I'm looking at though, it's Jasmine's inclusion in the life of her city. Besides the gym, the lighthouse is probably the most iconic feature of Olivine City, and she's the one who tends to the Pokemon that makes it work. Watson founded Mauville. He's so integral to the city that it literally wouldn't exist without him. There are numerous other examples of gym leaders taking roles similar to your rival by advancing the plot or being integral to the city or town that hosts their gym. It's been a gradual shift, but the gym leaders do appear to be celebrities for their regions, and even sometimes in others in the games where there's that slight crossover. And not just because of their gym status, they're also celebrities because they seem to be, for humans, what their gyms are for the towns. Representatives and even community leaders. I don't think that anyone can doubt that Lenora is the most powerful person in Knot Green City. and even commands respect through the rest of the region. She's important to the plot as well, as her and the other gym leaders of Unova even take on the Seven Sages late game. Clement actually invented super training. And Alola didn't have gyms, but the Kahunas are similar enough for this video, and all of them feature in the plot of the Sun and Moon games. These aren't kids with a hobby, they're not bullying teenagers, they're the heads of their community and even protectors. Now, not all of the gym leaders have interesting backstories or grand feats of heroism, but we could just blame game limitations for that. Jasmine's side quest is fun, but it's probably a bit unrealistic to have expected a similar quest for every gym leader. It would have gotten stale. Finding other ways to temporarily block progression makes the game interesting, but her side quest is also the only reason we know as much about her as we do, meaning leaders who couldn't fit into the plot can just be assumed to be important to their cities as well, even if we didn't hear those stories. That leads us to the next question. How do gym leaders get their jobs? If it's such an important role, who gets to make the cut? While the games don't tell us exactly how it happens, we can infer some based off of the tidbits we've received. For example, Faulkner inherited his position from his father. Maylene doesn't know how she became Veilstone City's gym leader, suggesting that sometimes application isn't necessary and it could just be requested of you. Riley was offered a gym leadership by Byron, but Riley said that Rorik should have been considered first, which tells us two things. One, primogeniture is apparently a thing in the Pokemon world, and that other gym leaders can make suggestions or even the decision on another town's leader. Norman moved regions to be a gym leader, meaning that gym leaders don't necessarily have to be natives of the region. It stated that Whitney was chosen specifically by the Pokemon League, probably out of awe that spamming rollout was a valid strategy, and Claire seems to have been picked by Lance as they're both Dragon Masters, and when she refuses to give you your badge, it's only the threat of the Dragon Master contacting Lance that makes her give it up. Being a gym leader doesn't appear to have any set rules attached to acquiring that position. The above examples show a plethora of ways of someone gaining that position, and the fighting dojo in Johto suggests that only gyms have to have the approval of the league, not the leaders themselves. I mean, Claire straight up refuses to give you a badge even though you legitimately won the match, and only Lance is mentioned to force her hand, not the league itself. Candace in Snowpoint City guards the Snowpoint Temple and can be overheard mentioning that she doesn't particularly like it, meaning gym leaders can have expected duties that they can disagree with. She even wonders if her personality is a good match for the gym type. And the Kahunas. Again, there's a lot there, but they can also be given the position without their input, serve for life, and have duties to perform, taking on a religious role as well as a political and cultural one. I've seen people liken gym leaders to feudalism, which I can see why they would draw that conclusion on the surface. The champion or someone at the league is actually the owner of the gyms and has knights to protect them, but this is murky. Even though some of the gyms are inherited, not all of them are, and the champion, while a celebrity, is never stated to have such political power. There's a hierarchy, yes, but hierarchies are present in almost every form of social organization and don't automatically mean feudalism. Feudalism is a difficult word to define and often gets misused anyway. I will absolutely dive deeper into this in my video discussing the politics of the Pokemon world, because I don't have time to rip apart those layers here, but the final conclusion that I've reached for this video is that gym leaders are meant to be the paragons of their cities, the de facto heads, closer to the idea of head of state rather than the head of government. For a very simplified definition, a head of state is usually seen as the face of the nation, the person who embodies the values of the nation, while the head of government has the actual power, but again complex layers. For a quick example, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II is the head of state of the United Kingdom, but Prime Minister Boris Johnson is the head of government. The gym leaders being head of state would mean they have to fully represent the type or culture of the city their gym is in, but more than that, they have to be community leaders too. The more that the games have fleshed out their roles, the more importance they seem to have. There's the celebrity aspect to be sure, but they also seem to have their own authority and influence. almost like a position of actual political power, if only because the weight of their names is great enough to achieve change. This would explain the variety of ways that the position can be awarded, just like positions of power in the real world. In Violet City, it is believed that the child who watches their parents lead a gym would be the best choice to replace them. In Mauville, they decided that the person who founded the city obviously represents that city the best. And in Goldenrod, the League had to step in to find the best battler to represent the normal type. This video was inspired by Milo being a farmer and what that might mean for Galar, but I'm starting to think that it doesn't have to mean anything. The city is far more important. Milo is a gym leader because Turffield values farmers above all else, not because Galar does. He exemplifies what the town is known for and stands for, and any other type of grass user probably would have felt out of place. It may seem like a bland conclusion, but it'll also be important in that video I mentioned on Pokemon politics. Gym leaders aren't bullies, they aren't necessarily the strongest trainers in the region, and they're not just mini-bosses. I think gym leaders would be the closest thing to de facto leadership in a town. In places like Opelucid City, the mayor and gym leader are one and the same, but even in the cases where that's not true, the gym leaders are often present for important events, far more than any elected official, using their celebrity for good, like Alessa convincing Bianca's father to let her be a Pokemon trainer, or else guarding temples or being lighthouse caretakers. Even Giovanni, while using that authority for evil, is still in a leadership position. Brock, Whitney, Giovanni, all of these names are recognizable to us and to the people of the Pokemon world, not just because they're trainers, but because of their importance to the deeper plots of the games, their importance to their cities, and because their personalities are just a bit more fleshed out. Defenders in some cases, leaders in others, and still down to head their gyms, a job in and of itself. I don't know that everything came out the way that it was supposed to. This was a theory-ish video that was kind of the way my brain handled the question of Milo's profession. I suppose it answered why gym leaders are important beyond just the mechanics of them giving you the badges you need to progress. Looking at how gyms might have been influenced and how the leaders play a role in the world of Pokemon, sometimes even just beyond the plot, was interesting, I hope. I shall be back next week with another video. I will see you all next time, and until then, stay safe.